Go. There it is. YouTube just changed its interface. It says you're live. Okay. All right. I think it's working now. Blue. Does it say it's live there, Ricky?
Mm-hmm.
I was waiting for my to see me come on to the thing. Welcome to Inair's Kitchen. Sorry about the rough start yet again. YouTube keeps changing the way this works, and they're in the midst of updating their YouTube broadcasting stuff. So my apologies. We're trying to make it as smooth as possible, but still getting there. All right, let's get started, guys. I want to just confirm that that's coming up. I still want to wait. I think that looks like it's me. All right, great. So today we're going to do pineapple upside down cake, which I'm really excited to get going with. Sorry about the late start. Thank you everybody for being here. This is a really simple cake to make. We're going to make from scratch. A lot of the recipes for upside down cake start with a box cake mix. We're not going to do it that way. But it doesn't take very long to make it from scratch, and it's a lot more delicious, and you get to control exactly what's in there. I love pineapple upside down cake. People might be wondering why this is showing up on the show, especially if you're here because you love clover, something we've ever served with clover. But as I was thinking about things we could do on the show, I was thinking there's an opportunity for us to do recipes that are really delicious, that people used to make all the time when they cooked at home, and that aren't made anymore. I don't know of any restaurant serving up pineapple upside down cake. I'm sure there's something out there, but it's nothing I've seen on the menu for a long time. I don't know bakeries that serve pineapple upside down cake, but it's really delicious. And it's something my mom told me she used to have it like at least once a week or so when she was a kid. She used to have dessert every day, which I just found out recently, which is crazy because my mom didn't make us dessert every day. She made us wonderful desserts, but it was a very occasional thing. And she used to have a jar full of cookies in her house at all times, and which is also hard to imagine. So we're gonna make this from scratch. I want to go through the ingredients that you need to make pineapple upside down cake. So these are the things you should be shopping for if you don't already have them. It's using a lot of staples. So we have some eggs, salt, sugar, brown sugar, all-purpose flour, and we're also going to need a can of pineapples. I have not tried making this with fresh pineapples, but I think that there might be issues with that. I think canned pineapples may work better. And we're going to need some baking powder. So I'd say everything here except for the pineapple is something that most people probably have in their pantry. We're going to need butter as well. The pineapple is not the only thing you can choose for this. If you want, and if you have some other kind of canned fruit, anything will work. So pears, peaches. I think we ate all of our peaches, but we usually have canned peaches up there. You can use any of those things. And you could even do upside down cakes with other kinds of fruit that's not in a can. I'll show you guys in a little later some fun recipes for that I found in my grandma's cookbooks when I was looking at that earlier. So should we get started?
Yes.
All right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take this pan we're going to cook it in. Now you can make this in a round pan, so we could do it like this. That would work fine. And we could also make it in a round cake pan. And we could also make this in a square, like a brownie pan. I don't have one of those square pans, and I like this rectangular shape a little better than I like the round shape for this. So this is, we're going to put about 1/3 of a cup of butter in there. And this butter needs to melt. And so the way we're going to do this, this is a fun old recipe. We're not going to dirty many things. And you'll see a lot of recipes for pineapple upside down cake online that have a lot more dishes than this does. This is an older recipe where you have to clean everything yourself. And so we're going to melt the butter in the pan that we're going to use to cook it in. So go ahead and put that in the oven. The oven's going to be at 375, and we're going to wait a couple minutes while that melts. In the meantime, who wants to open the pineapples? So this is do you know how to do it? We don't really have this kind of can very often at home. There you go. And pull it up carefully. Yeah, it's like you get some cat food. Yeah. Hopefully a lot yummier than cat food. You got it. There you go. Good job. Alright, perfect. So we've got the pineapples open. And then let's go ahead and get started with making the cake. So we're gonna do something that I don't think we've done on the show yet, which is we're gonna separate eggs. So my favorite way to separate eggs, I need a bowl for this. So my favorite way to separate eggs is just to take the egg and carefully crack it. And by careful, I just mean I don't want to break that yolk. But just go ahead and crack the egg. And let's do this. We're going to need 3 eggs like this. So you want to go ahead and crack 3 there, Blue? You got it. You want to do one by? So just when you open it up, just be careful not to punch through the yolk with your finger. There you go. All right. Got that last one by. Our eggs vary a little bit in size because we have chickens laying them. So this one of these is a pretty big yolk, the other's a little smaller, but it'll all work out fine. All right. Bingo. So here we go. We've got the 3 yolks and we have the whites. And we want to separate the yolks and the whites in this recipe. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this yolk. Will you grab these, get everything out of there for me? Sorry, I should have done that before I grabbed this yolk. So you're just going to pick the yolk up with your fingers, just gently. And your fingers are really good at this. You got it. So pull that stuff out of there. There you go. Pull that out of there. Okay. So you're just going to lift this up with your fingers, and you're going to just drop that yolk in there. And so I'm going to do the same thing here. And if you're just gentle with your fingers, it works really well. I'm going to shake that white off a little bit. And that one's a little sticky, that white, huh? You want to do one, Blue? You want to go wash your hands, make sure they're extra clean? I'll let you do the last one, okay? Got it? And the dishwasher. How's that go? Yeah. Good job, Blue. Nice job, you got it. Just pop it in there. All right, so we've got our yolks separated from our whites, and we're going to do this because we're using the whites to bring air into the dough, into the cake batter. So it's going to create a lightness. And then with our yolks in here, we're just going to go ahead and beat those guys up. And Violet, I think we need to add some sugar to that. It says 1 cup of sugar. So we can add this one here. You want to measure that out? 1 cup, exactly. And Blue, I think we're gonna add a little vanilla extract to this. You wanna pour some vanilla extract in there? Yeah, here, I'll make it. We'll hold it like that. Perfect. Go ahead and add that to you. So a lot of my favorite cake recipes are made this way, where you not necessarily, some use yolks, some don't, but where you use the whites to create the fluffiness in the cake. And there are a lot of different cakes that are made that way. I think it's something that's done a little less often now, but it's maybe a little bit of an older way to make it. I think before people had baking powder, baking soda, they put a lot more on that. We don't even have a teaspoon there. Just pour what's in there. And then Violet, you want to put a little salt in there too? We've got a 1/4 teaspoon of salt.
Salt, okay.
It's right here. Or you got salt there. That works. Either one. Either one. And then it's just a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, right?
Okay.
Alright, so we're letting that go. So we're letting this go until it gets sort of fluffy. You want to get a spatula, Blue, so we can push that around in there?
Sure.
Nice job. Now, do you remember how to do that? You turn it off, and then you can just reach in there and just push everything away from the sides a little bit. The Blue's just helping the mixer because these things aren't that precise, so we're just helping give it a little better chance of mixing. That look good?
Yeah.
And then let her rip again. So this is something you normally do for like 2 to 3 minutes. If you could use a hand mixer, you can do this by hand. If you were doing this by hand with like a whisk, you'd want to go a little longer. But you're trying to get a light color coming out of the egg yolks. Like you want sort of almost a white color developing. They started out being a darker golden yellow color, and we want to get this to a sort of fluffier, lighter color of yellow. There we go. So we have a little bit of pineapple juice we're going to add to that. All right, and at that point we're just sort of mixing that up gently. And we're going to take this out of this mixing bowl now. I'm going to move this to a second bowl. So we have to dirty 2 bowls to make this recipe because we're going to use the mixer again to beat up those egg whites and get them nice and fluffy. So that's the next stage that's going to happen here. And when you're beating up egg whites, you need to make sure there's no fat in the mixing bowl, because any fat that's in there, and the egg yolks have fat in them, any fat that's in there will keep those whites from fluffing up. So what I'm going to do now that I've transferred this is I'm going to clean this, and I'm not just going to rinse it with water, but I need to make sure all the fat is off of there. So I'm going to use soap. Make sure that I'm using that soap to get all this bowl and the whisk here clean of any fats. That'll help my egg whites rise. Alright, so nice hot water and plenty of soap. Now we have a clean bowl, and I don't want any of that extra water in there, so I'm going to go ahead and dry it up a little bit. Now, Violet, you want to drop the whites in there?
Sure.
Go
It's
ahead.
right here.
Yeah, that's it. Pour it in there. Yep. All of them. Nice job. And then we'll turn the mixer on high. Go to high. All the way. Keep going. That's it. So we're gonna let that run for a couple minutes. And we'll get the flour next. Now this recipe doesn't require a lot of flour. It's a cup of flour we're gonna use. So this would be all-purpose flour. I think we're going to go like half and half with the fresh flour and the white all-purpose. So we're going to put half a cup of white flour there and half a cup of fresh flour. And we're going to need baking powder. We're going to add the baking powder here, so as it sifts through, the baking powder is going to mix in really nicely and not have any clumps. So 1 teaspoon of baking powder. You want to do that, Will? How are those egg whites looking, Vi? Just getting there. Nice job, Will. Yeah, just knock it all in there. Okay? So this is a nice trick to mix the baking powder in with the flour. And then we're going to have, we're going to fold this in with the egg whites. Which is a technique we haven't done yet on the show, but it's not too hard to do. I think you guys can all follow along. So you see all this stuff, that's all the bran from the flour. It's too large to get through this fine mesh, but we're going to add it in there because it's good for us to eat. So the whites are almost stiff. So let's take a quick look at these egg whites. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. Now, when we're beating up egg whites, there is something called soft peaks, which this is at right now. So I pull this up, and the peaks fall over. I don't know if you can see that on the. See, it's a little bit hard for me to show that, but if I pull this up, the peaks fall over. Another way to look at it is, if I hold this up, I'm looking to see if it falls. And this is just almost stiff. When it's fully stiff, it'll be like, gook. So we're just about there. We're gonna let these go just a little bit longer. They're looking good.
Have you added other things to them?
Just egg whites.
Wow, I'm so pumped up.
Cool, isn't it? All right, and there we go. And there have been so many awesome requests of how to substitute and make some of these things vegan or dairy-free or egg-free. I think that I don't know how to make a lot of the classic recipes that way right now, but I think it might be a fun thing to explore. So popovers are going to be my first exploration. Try and figure out a way to make a vegan popover, and then maybe we'll take on some of these other things. Pineapple upside down cake should be one you can figure out how to make vegan. So what we've done now is just put all the ingredients in here, and we're going to carefully fold these together. And so what we want to do is mix everything. We want to incorporate the liquid and the dry, but we don't want to lose all those bubbles that are in the whites. And so the technique we use, we're going to come around and under it and then bringing it over. So you see this like soft technique that's getting everything incorporated, but is not bashing those bubbles. And we're not quite there yet. There's still some egg whites that are separate. This is a very similar to the technique we would use if we made a souffle. It wouldn't be that different. Looking at this point, it would sort of look yellowy and some egg whites being mixed in. Souffle might be a fun one to make someday. We got our chickens. We have to save up chicken eggs for a while because it uses a lot of eggs. We have to wait till the little ones get bigger. All right, so almost there. Okay, so we have a nice batter here. That's exactly what we were looking to do. That's all set. Now we're going to come over here and we're going to sprinkle some brown sugar. This is the butter's melted. I pulled this out of the oven a little while ago. So that butter's melted, but we didn't want to overcook it. We just want to melt it. We're going to put 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar there. So find the 1/3 cup and then do it twice. You got it? And we're just going to sprinkle it over the whole area with your fingers. Yep, you got it. Yep, it's not. Don't need to be too careful. We'll just like move sort of quickly because everything's waiting for us. So we just go like this, okay? And then we're gonna take these. You guys can help with these, and we're gonna just lay these guys out in a little grid. Yep. And I don't have any of those red cherries, and they're not good for you anyway. But I have some cranberries in the fridge, so we're gonna try to do pineapple upside down cake, New England style. We'll put little cranberries in the middle. And you really can use a lot of different fruits will work for this recipe. And let's see if we can figure out. There's 2 more of these rings left. I bet we can figure a way to fit them in there. What do you think? Does that look good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, put those cranberries in. All right, just in between the rings. It's perfect. All right, now we're at a point where we're ready to put the batter in. So this fluffy batter is just gonna spread very gently. Again, we're working with all those air bubbles we worked so hard to make with the egg whites, and we don't really want to deflate them. So we're just bringing them over carefully, and then I'm going to just gently spread that so that it gets good coverage. Just encourage it over there, this side and this side. All right. So if you wanted to make this and you had other fruit, that works fine. If you wanted to make this and you had a box of cake mix, that would work fine. And we're going to put this in the oven. All right, so that's at 375 now. It's going to cook for about 20 minutes or so. And we're going to have a beautiful upside down cake coming out after. And so we have a little bit of pineapple juice left over. I would say don't throw this away, it's really yummy. We made sodas the other week. Blue already has a little jar here. I guess this is, when we were testing this recipe, we saved some of the pineapple juice, so we're going to save that. And we'll use this to make pineapple sodas, which is pretty fun.
We were doing pineapples on pizzas.
Yeah, we did the sodas and pizzas. And, oh, that's right, we opened pineapple to put on the pizza. That's
We have juice left over.
I forgot what we opened that for. Yes. Awesome. And so this is cooking now. It's going to take a few minutes. And I thought that we might take a moment in between to answer a few questions. In particular, folks have been asking about how to season cast iron. So I'm going to take a few minutes to go through seasoning cast iron. And then we can take any other questions people have. And if we're still around when that cake's ready, I'll pull it out of the oven. I want to mention, I just had a really fun phone interview, video chat with Rabbi Barry Dollinger. He is the rabbi who helped certify Clover kosher. And he has been involved with making matzah. He started a matzah company. And he's doing like an old-fashioned kind of matzah, and he's buying, yeah, I'll put it later. And he's buying the matzah he's buying the flour from Maine Grains, which is really cool. We work with those guys, we love what they do, and it's really neat that he's connected with them as well. So a few things on that. I'm going to post a video of my interview with Rabbi Dollinger where he talks a little bit about the history of matzah, why it tastes so bad, and it's supposed to taste bad. Wow, it just gave me a bad look. It's supposed to taste bad, and he talks a little bit about why, and then he has some instructions for you to make it at home if you want to. He also, on his website, you can order the matzah. If I were a little better organized, I would have thought of this before Passover. We're in Passover right now, so if you want to make it at home, that can be a really fun thing to do. I should have done this a week ago so people could have prepared for Passover with the matzah, but it might be a fun thing for some people to do at home. Let's get on to cast iron. So I really love my cast iron pans. I was talking about them a little bit on a previous episode, and some people have been asking about how to season cast iron, so I thought I would just go through that. And I'll talk about seasoning, but I'll also just talk about general care of cast iron and why it's so cool. So cast iron is made from iron that's been cast in a mold, so that's where it gets its name. And most of the cast iron you can buy today in the US is from this company called Lodge. Although I just found a cast iron company in Providence that's selling cast iron cookware, which is really cool. So maybe there's going to be some new choices. I like Lodge a lot. I think it'd be great if there's some other choices as well. And you can see there's like a roughness on the outside of this. Some of that's just debris, but some of it's from the casting itself. So there's like a texture that's left. And you can see a little bit of the texture on the pan, but some of it's wearing away. And part of the reason that is wearing away is when you're using cast iron, unlike other non-stick surfaces, you want to use a metal spatula. So when you use a metal spatula, every time you use that, it slowly smoothens the surface, and it makes it a better cooking surface. So with most of your non-stick cookware, you're going to want to use like a wooden or plastic spatula. But when you're using cast iron, you're going to want to use a metal spatula. So if you're making eggs in this or something else, you use a metal spatula. Each time you rub it on that, it's going to make the surface a little more smooth, and the more smooth the surface becomes, the better it's going to work for you. So that's one little trick about cast iron. A second thing I'll tell you about cast iron that's really awesome about cast iron is that this piece I bought myself, but if I knew more when it was time to get a cast iron pan, I wouldn't have bought something new, because what I've learned, which is awesome and makes a lot of sense, is you can get cast iron that's 100 years old, 150 years old, and you can make it brand new, which is so cool. And so this really is cookware that can last forever and ever. And what you need to do if you have really old cookware and you want to refresh it is you have to heat it up hot enough that all of this burns off. And if you heat this up hot enough, you'll get to a place where what's left is the fresh metal, just like when it was brand new and newly cast. And that's not a process I've done before, but there's some resources on the web. You can see how people do that. Some people use torches, some other people create really hot ovens. But if you get this hot enough, you'll burn off all this carbon layer, and you'll have just the iron underneath. And then you can start again, and you can freshly season it. And so you can basically start with really old cookware and make it brand new again, which I think is really, really cool. You can also go through the process of seasoning it yourself at home, which you have to do periodically. This one's in pretty good shape. I don't actually need to reseason it right now, but I'm going to use that as an example just to show you how that works. When you're having issues where if you have some rust developing or your food is sticking, you may want to reseason it. And to do that, you just need a little bit of oil, and you can use any kind of oil. I have a little bit of olive oil here, which works just fine, but you could use canola oil, you could use anything. And then the amount of oil I'm going to put on this is not a lot. So you see that it's just a teeny bit of oil. And I'm going to rub that oil around. And I want to rub that oil on all the surfaces that I'm going to use to cook. But not just that, I'm going to want to rub the oil on other surfaces that might get wet, that I don't want to rust. So I'm going to rub it all around the top rim, all around the inside. Now, I don't actually even want this much oil on. I know it doesn't look like I started with very much oil, but it's more than I even want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a cloth. Oopsies. Thanks, Violet. I'm going to use a cloth, and I'm going to...
Oh.
It might be working again. All right, try again. Try recording. I think it might be on.
Okay.
This is easy. You tap this 3 times.
You want to get out there?
It's done.
Yeah. Okay, is it connecting fine?
Yeah, might be.
All right. So I think we're back. We were getting excited about doing a old-fashioned episode because our power went out and the thing said it could continue recording, so we were going to do that. But I think there was a little interruption now, so sorry to everybody for that interruption. We were going through seasoning cast iron, so I put a very little amount of oil, I rubbed the oil around, and then I took any excess oil off with this rag. And then what I would do is I'd put this in the oven at 350 degrees, and I put it upside down, because you don't want any of that oil pooling. So I put it upside down, so if there's any excess oil, it's going to fall off. And then I'm also going to put a sheet pan underneath it to catch any of that oil. And I'm going to leave it in the oven at 350 degrees for like a full hour. And then after that, I'll take it out, and it will have like a brand new non-stick surface. So you can do this anytime you need to refresh your pans, and it's not too difficult to do. It's a great thing to do when you've got something cooking in the oven at 350 degrees, and you just pop it in there alongside it. The other tips I'll give you about cast iron cookware, it's sort of indestructible. Like I said, if you have an issue, you just bring it back to new again without much effort. So don't be too scared about it. A lot of people say you can never use soap on it. I use soap, so I don't really. I think that's a silly idea. You don't want to scrub it too aggressively, I would say. And as you season the surface, it ends up being a pretty good non-stick surface. What I would recommend is when you're cooking with it, right when you're done cooking with it, go ahead and clean it, let it cool, and then clean it right away. Don't leave it dirty. It's a lot easier to clean that way. And then when you're done cleaning it, probably the most important thing I can tell you is you need to wipe it dry. So water's the enemy of cast iron. You never ever want to leave this like soaking in your sink. That's not a good idea for cast iron. So use it to cook with, you clean it right afterwards, you dry it after you've cleaned it, and if you do those things, it will last you a really long time. And if you ever have an issue where you've ruined some of its surface, all you have to do is just reseason it, which is relatively easy to do. So that's cast iron. The last thing I'm going to tell you about cast iron today, which is something I think is really exciting about it, is when I started using cast iron more often, I was noticing things cook a little differently in it. And it turns out that it wasn't just my imagination, it's actually true. I spent some time looking this up to try to understand what was going on, and I was thinking maybe the rate of heating from iron is different than it is for other materials. And it turns out that yes, cast iron has a very high rate of heating, which means that when you're cooking food in this, one way that heat is getting to the food. This is going to be a little brief. At some point, we're going to do supplemental science episodes. This is going to be a very, very brief version of that. But there's some different ways that heat is transferred. So if you have your pan here, so say this is the surface of the pan, and you've got that surface is getting hot because maybe you've got flames heating it up from underneath, and you've got a little piece of food on top. Sorry about that. You got a little piece of food on top. One way that heat can get to the food is through what's called conduction. So this is the spots where the food is touching, literally touching something. It can heat up. And if you put oil in there, then you might improve how much of that's happening, because the oil will create a little layer and the oil will get hot, and then everywhere the food's touching the oil. Because if you have a dry pan, it's only going to heat up where it touches directly. If you have some oil in there, it's going to you're going to get some heating through that oil. There's another way, so that's number one. That's a heating method number one. It's called thermal transfer. Second way is you can have something called convection. And so convection is heat moving around basically in the air. So you get gradients of heat, cause some movement in the air, and that ends up heating your other pieces of your food. This is a more gentle kind of heating, and this is what's happening in your oven when you're cooking. There's another type of heating, which is radiation, or radiative heating. And the radiative heating happens because this material right here, in this case, we're talking about cast iron. So this cast iron pan, as it gets hot, it actually emits infrared radiation. And that infrared radiation just is emitted from the surface of that pan. And that's going to be a third way that things are heated. So when you're cooking with cast iron, you are getting more of this third kind of heating than you are with other materials. And it changes the way things cook. So that's a little bit about cast iron and how it works. It's a really wonderful thing. If you don't have any, I encourage you to get some. It's not very expensive, and I think it would be really cool if I were buying cast iron right now, and I'm not going to have to for 100 years, but if I were buying cast iron right now, I would get a really old piece of cast iron and try to refinish it, because I think that'd be a fun project. Let's take a peek at our cake. Smells pretty good, doesn't it, Blue?
Yes. Smells great.
All right, so I have here a clean knife, and I'm just gonna touch that into the middle, and what I'm getting there is goop. So that's telling me that this is not quite done cooking. So I'm gonna put it back in, and we'll let it cook a little bit longer. So this is probably gonna need another 5 or 10 minutes. I bet we lost a lot of viewers when we had our electrical storm. But if there's anybody who is watching who has questions, we'll take a couple minutes to answer those questions, and then we'll check on the cake again. And if it's not done yet, we'll do what we've done in the past. I'll just post a little video of taking it out of the oven later. Are there any questions right now? You want to take a peek? I also thought I would show you guys this is a I'm sorry it's on its side, but this is a little photograph. I was looking at my grandma's cookbooks, and this cookbook was interesting because it says a mixture for upside down cakes. And it tells you the different mixtures you can use, and then it just says put a batter on it or a yeasted dough, and then bake it. And I love it. You know, when this cookbook was written, that was enough direction for people on how to make the cake. Things have changed a lot since then, obviously. Beans. Some of you guys are getting your beans from Charlie Bear. That's awesome. If you haven't watched that bean episode, please go back in time. Popovers. People keep sending us their pictures of popovers. No, this is not a picture from a recent popover experiment. This was from another picture I found in my grandma's old cookbooks. So this is from the 40s, and it was a savory popover recipe, which is really fun. Somebody made the lentil soup and some biscuits. It looks really yummy. It's sort of making me hungry right now. We have some people making the beautiful eggs. I'm glad that you were able to watch the show and try that out. Got another egg bowl right here. The pickle looks really yummy. And we have more popovers that people are making, which is awesome. It's so exciting to see people successfully making popovers in so many different ways. Blue, do you want to just check and see if there's any questions? And if not, we'll close it all up.
Doesn't seem to be any.
No questions? All right,
Yeah.
awesome. So sorry about the interruption with the lightning storm. We'll post this online later today. And keep an eye out for that interview with Rabbi Dolger and the method on making matzah at home. That might be a fun thing for people to try out for Passover. Thanks for joining us.